Hey, welcome back, and thanks for joining me for another episode in my Bandai B-Wing model build series. So I've got the main body here, and I'm trying to figure out, do I want to mount it from the bottom, in which case it can only be in the vertical position with the wings facing outward like a T, or do I want to mount it from the rear through the engines, which is the way the actual kit comes, as you can see here. This is the base that it comes with, which I won't be using. I'd be using 1/4-inch tubing. This would block the engine slightly, however it will give me the advantage of I'd be able to rotate the ship and have it in the horizontal position or the upright position. So I'm trying to figure out how I want to do that. But moving on to the main body here, the one thing I wanted to do, as you may remember from my very first video, is I was hoping to motorize the wings. This here is so thin. I've been trying to figure it out, and there is just no room in here to mount anything for me to, or at least I'm not equipped enough to figure out how to mount anything inside of here to make the wings work. Not to mention there's a gap between the wings and the body, and I just don't see how it can be done with this small of a scale. So what we've got here, and what I will do, is when these pieces are clipped on, this is what holds the wings together, and you can see the wing just kind of goes inside here, and there's a rod that goes through the center and holds it in position. You can see there's a slight gap there, and I just, again, I don't see how I can motorize it. So I'm just going to focus on getting my wiring done for my lasers and mounting this headlight section to the front here. So you can see when the wing is here, you can see where my wire is, and the wing will open and close. I'm going to have to drill into the body in there and probably have the wire exposed a little bit, which I don't mind. I may paint it, but it's going to have to go right into the body so that we'll be able to open and close without pinching the wire. I'm going to have to leave a little slack. So I'm going to start out by drilling a hole with a 0.75 millimeter drill bit, and you can see I've got a hole drilled right here. And then I'm going to do the same for the other side. And here, you know, my wire fits through there, no problem at all, as you can see. And it comes up and it'll go right into the center of the main body of the B-Wing. And you can see when I pull the wires all the way through, there's a little slack here. I can pull it fairly taut, which I will probably do, and it'll be, you know, pretty tight and close to the body. It would only be when the wing is folded down that there would be a little bit of slack, but for the most part I'll have it in the open position anyway, so that shouldn't be a big deal. So I've got both of my holes drilled out on either side for both of the wings at this point. And then you can see here on the inside where the hole is, where the wire will come through, just a little spot right here in the corner, and the wire will come on in into the center of the body here, and I'll be able to run it through my tubing. So that's one thing on my checklist out of the way. Moving on, we've got the headlights here. I don't know what else to call them, but you got these two little headlights in the front of the ship, and it connects to the front like so, and the rod for the wings goes right here. And I was originally going to run fiber through, and there's just nowhere really to run fiber through, especially without seeing the fiber. So I have come up with a different plan now on how I'm going to handle the headlights. You can see when the bottom wing is put on here how it looks, and when I put on this front piece, you can't really see a whole lot inside there. The rod will go through there. So whatever I do will be fairly hidden inside here, but you would still see any fiber optic running through there, which is what I do not want. So with this little piece here, it mounts right on the tip. I'm just going to run a little wire through the center there for some SMD LEDs and house them inside the whole assembly itself, right inside here, and have them running out into the main body, into the center portion here, and come out through my tubing once I have the mounting, and the wings will be on either side and they'll be going into the center. Then I also have my copper tape that will run down the wires into the center, and that'll come out and either run it out the bottom or the back. So I've got some 0.75 millimeter fiber here, which is pretty roughly the same diameter of these little molded in headlights on the front of this assembly portion here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to snip off both the headlights, and then I'm going to drill them out. And you can see here they just barely stick out past the front of the whole assembly. So I'll need to have some fiber sticking out, and I'll round the edges so that it basically looks very similar to this. So I've snipped off the headlights at this point. And now I'm going to go ahead and drill some holes through the center there. And I've gone and I've done a little pilot hole to start. And now I've gone and I've drilled in some 0.75 millimeter holes. And you can see when I take this fiber, I can push it right through the hole, and it comes out there, and I'll just have it stick out just a little bit past, and then I'll do a little bit of rounding of the fiber to match as close as possible the molded headlights. So I got my two pieces of fiber here. The one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to push it through this little metal metric ruler I have here, and I'm going to heat it up with the heat gun and use this to make a 90-degree bend in my fiber. I'm going to get it heated up here enough so that it starts to soften. There we go. And then I'm just going to push it and make a 90-degree bend. So I've got a 90-degree bend, as you can see right here, and then it'll fit right inside there. It fits into the center of this whole assembly, and then I'll just snip the fiber in the front to the right length for the headlight. And then I'll put my SMD in the center here, and it'll light up the fiber on either side. So I got my two little fibers cut, as you can see here, and I have a SMD LED which I plan on putting in the center between the two of them, and then when it's turned on, the light will go through and light up both of the headlights, as you can see here. Now I've rounded the tips and sanded it down a bit to give it that opaque look, and to round the tips so that when they're inserted it won't look like clear fiber. Might do a little more work on them, but the length is good, and I'm pretty happy with how that's turning out so far. And I cut the fiber here so the SMD will fit in there. So I shrank down this shrink tube here and put a little piece on either of my fiber optics. And I have the SMD LED which will fit inside the shrink tube. That will act as a housing to contain the light. I'm actually going to have to do one per fiber. My plan didn't work to have one light up both. It just didn't work well. But there's plenty of room for me to do a SMD on each fiber, and they're going to run out the back. So you can see there it works. I got a SMD with some electrical liquid tape here, which will secure the SMD inside and also act as a light blocking, and it secures the fiber optic. And then when I give it some power, you can see how they both light up here, and I think that's going to work out just fine. And here they are inserted into the entire housing, and I got plenty of room here for the wires to run out the back. So I've gone and I've primed and then painted this assembly with my Tamiya AS20 Insignia white paint, which is what I'll be using for the whole model. And here are my fiber optic assemblies in there. And then I secure them also with some liquid electrical tape, which will act as light blocking and hold them in place. And now what I've done is I've cut out this little piece of styrene, notched it, and this is going to fit right over the back here of the whole assembly and act as more light blocking and just fill in that whole gap so you don't see it inside the model. And again, I've gone and primed this, painted it white, painted the inside black so that it will block any light that may be coming out from this whole assembly. So I'm just going to put this here. And you can see how it fits right in there. And I've gone and I've super glued it in place. And I'll do a quick little test here, and you can see that there's no light leaking anywhere, just the LED fibers light up. You know, nothing is leaking out the back, nothing is leaking out the edges. It's pretty light tight. So now I need to drill a hole here so that my wires can run into the main body section. You can see how this piece just snaps on right there. So I just need to drill a little teeny hole right in the center there to run my wires into the main body. So what I did is with the blade I just kind of notched the edges there, and you can see when I put the two halves together there's just a little hole there from the notches that I made with my blade, and the wire will run through here into the center of the main body, up through here. And I've also cut a little piece of styrene and put it right here to curve the wires because they were getting bunched up when I'd push them through. The wire will come through here, hit my styrene, and it'll curve it up into the main body section rather than get it bunched up. And you can see here when I push it, the wires come up through the main body because of that curved styrene forcing it in that direction. And they fit in there very well. So I can just pull my wires through. Got the whole housing here, push it in place, and you can see the wires go inside there and it's completely hidden. I'll just put a dab of some paint there to cover up the red wire. And then with this piece on the center in position, you know, it'll be much more difficult to see inside there in the first place, but it's pretty clean looking. And I'm happy with the way this is turning out. And again, here it is with the LEDs on and the fibers lighting up. So that's one more thing on my checklist out of the way. Next up, we have my copper tape that needs to go inside here to light up my cockpit. So you remember I put copper tape around the cockpit. It catches on the top with these little nubs here where my wires are soldered. So I'm going to have to trim these little pieces here just a hair so that the cockpit will rotate. And you'll notice here the cockpit rubs up against the body, and if I leave it that way it's just going to rub my paint away. So I need to shave down just a tad the body part here as well. So I've gone and I've shaved this down, shaved and sanded this down back here. I've also done the same to this side, shaved and sanded it down a bit, and you can see I've trimmed down this little section here and this little section here so that the cockpit will freely rotate inside there without catching and without any paint rubbing, as you can see right here. So now that that's out of the way, I can move on to my copper tape here. I have two pieces that I've cut, and I'm just going to secure it. I put a little dab of super glue there, and it will secure right inside there. I'm going to take my cockpit, push it in place and pull the copper tape just tight enough so that it definitely makes contact, and then I'll secure it down into the main body so that when the cockpit is put in place, it will always make contact. So I've got both of them secured in place here, as you can see. And if I put my cockpit here and I take my meter, just make sure there's some continuity there. And as you can see, with the cockpit sitting there, it's making contact with the copper tape. And I'll just double check my other side here, make sure that it's working. We have continuity, not touching that side, working on that side. Alright, so that's one more thing down on my checklist. So that's going to be it for this video. Next one I'll cover the engine lighting and finishing up the main body and getting into painting. So thanks for joining me. If you like watching my videos, please feel free to give them a like. And so you don't miss any of my upcoming videos, click subscribe.